Welcome to today's webinar, A Dozen Things Our Schools Must Do to Remain Relevant in the Next Decade, brought to you by Simple K-12. My name is Lori, and I am here with Jonathan Martin, and we are so excited to have all of you here with us today. We have lots of great webinars coming up, so we hope that you will join us. You can register for those upcoming sessions, including those days of learning inside of the teacher learning community. If you're joining us live, I just sent out a tweet, so feel free to retweet to your followers and invite them to attend today's session that is free and open to the public. Be sure to include that link as well as the hashtag SK12 in your tweet. Also, the back channel is now open. It's a great place for attendees to take notes and chat with one another. I went ahead and posted that link in the chat area of GoToWebinar. Incidentally, all of the notes from today's session will be archived under the shared resources inside of the teacher learning community, so you can access them after the webinar at your convenience. We will also have some time for Q&A at the end of our session today, so feel free to submit your questions through that questions box of GoToWebinar. Now, it does tend to auto-collapse, but if you click on that orange arrow, the questions box will open and you can go ahead and type in your question. Now, a little bit about our presenter. Jonathan Martin earned his BA from Harvard University and his MA in Educational Administration from the University of San Francisco School of Education. After teaching high school for nearly a decade in Berkeley, California, he became an administrator and has served as a principal and head of school for 15 years. Since 2009, he has presented at nearly 20 conferences and schools in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. We are so happy to have you here with us today, Jonathan.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you.
I'm going to go ahead and pass the screen to you.
Great. Let's see here.
Okay, great. I see your screen.
Okay. And as you can see, my presentation is just a little bit differently titled than the one shared on the website. A dozen ways for us to remain compelling and relevant, engaging and preparatory, significant and meaningful for our kids in the coming decade and the coming transformative years. I think we all recognize and realize how much the world is changing, how much the world of information and learning is changing. And I really love our schools. I love schoolhouses. And I want to do everything we can to sort of help others and for my own sake, my own students, navigate these changing, navigate the channels of these changing waters. My presentation is going to be in roughly two parts. I'm going to set up a little bit of an overview about what's changing, how we know education is changing, how in some of the key resources and founts of wisdom I use to think about education in the coming years, and then I'm going to shift and talk about my dozen suggestions. So kind of a two-part presentation, and I'm going to have to move fast to get through this in half an hour. We already had an introduction. You already had an introduction to me and who I am. But what I would add is that in addition to presenting in the last 4 years, I've also been blogging quite actively since 2008. I think in the past 4 years, I've written nearly 700 posts. Almost all of them effectively on this topic, whether explicitly or implicitly. All of the 700 pieces I've written in the last 4 years have been about how is education changing and what do we need to do to ride this wave, to navigate these waters. I would add that I spent time 3 years ago. I took 6 months and I went and visited schools. I visited 21 different high schools, mostly in California, and at those schools I shadowed students. I spent full school days, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon, shadowing a student, usually an 11th grader, sitting in the student seats, viewing the classroom through the student eyes to the best of my ability, and seeing what it felt like to be in a class for 45 minutes or an hour and a half, seeing observing what was happening in those classrooms, thinking about, is this engaging? Is this relevant? Is this compelling for me? Do I feel good about being here? And just as important, or more so, am I learning? Am I getting something I need to have? And so a lot of what my thinking has been and my practice has been as a school leader has been informed by that kind of firsthand observation. And I would just add, if you haven't taken time, I don't know how many of us have done this, because when I tell people about this, they usually tell me they're a bit surprised. Take time to shadow students, to sit in the student seats, to observe learning through those eyes and key off of that in your own educational leadership. It's really powerful. So, one of my key starting points here is the book Disrupting Class, and I don't know how many of you have read this, but it's certainly one of the most important books written in the last 5 years to explain how much education is changing. And the prediction in this book is that by 2019, just 7 years from now, more than 50% of high school courses will be offered online. That more than 50%, I think it's just not the courses will be offered, well, but 50% of the high school courses that students are taking will be offered online. That Christensen's prediction here is that education is going, in a sense, the direction of travel agents. We all used to go to the travel agent to book our flights, and now we do that online. And travel agencies had to either dramatically transform the way they do their business, or they went out of business. And I think we can realize that this is coming. This is coming fast at our schools. The ability for students to opt out of bricks and mortar education, to leave our schoolhouses, and instead take their coursework online. And we have to be sort of, I think every decision we make about the education we're offering has to be done with a cognizance that this is coming. We see this already in the form of Khan Academy. Now, Khan Academy doesn't offer credits for coursework, but it's already a way for students to do a lot of their learning online. And increasingly, our students are saying to themselves, they're saying, in some cases, the bold ones, the outspoken ones are saying to their teachers, why do I need to come to class? Why do I need to come to school? Why do I need to sit in class and listen to the teacher if I can get this information, if I can get this learning by watching Khan Academy or the equivalent? What's the point? That's a question students, starting in 2nd or 3rd grade, and certainly in 7th through 12th grade, love to ask. What's the point? Why am I here? And if they can get it elsewhere, it forces us to think hard about this. I think MOOCs are coming fast. This is more of a higher education phenomenon right now, but higher education sometimes paves the way for developments that come at us in K-12. And I think MOOCs are, it was a big article about the New York Times just yesterday, MOOCs are this online learning experience where students can do coursework. Right now they can't get credit for it all that easily, but that's going to change fast. Programs like Coursera, Udacity, edX are offering courses for students to take anywhere in the world for free. Right now, my 10-year-old son, he's in 5th grade, he and I are jointly taking a Stanford course on creativity. It's called a Crash Course on Creativity by the renowned professor Tina Seelig. And he and I are taking this course together, and I'm making my 10-year-old do a lot of the coursework for this. Right now, he won't get credit for it, but it just shows you that this is part of the dynamic now, and it's forcing students to wonder, why do I come to school? What's school for? Will Richardson's new book, and many of you probably know Will Richardson for his several books on online information, online learning, wikis and podcasts and blogging and the like. His new book is called Why School? This is what I'm saying. People are asking, why school? And then his subtitle is very important here, How Education Must Change When Learning and Information Are Everywhere. And so in a sense, the presentation I'm sharing with you today is my answer to why school, or it's my suggestion to how educators can answer the question, how education must change. The things that we need to keep doing and doing more of and do better, things that we need to add to what we're doing to make school relevant and compelling, engaging. And by compelling, I mean something that students want to participate in, that they're drawn to, is what I mean by compelling. I should add, let me just take a quick pause here. I should add that every one of my resources, the books and articles that I cite in this presentation are listed on a Google Doc, a public Google Doc page that I will provide the link to at the end of the presentation, and which I already put on the Titan pad. So that link is available for you for these sources. You don't have to frantically write them down as I move quickly through this. So I'm shifting gears now just a little bit. I'm moving from the sources of information, the books and articles that have pressed me to show me how much the world is changing, and now I'm talking about what I draw upon, the resources that help me think about what education is going to be like in the next 5 to 10 years. Darn it, sorry about that. I'll get right back into this. How education is going to be changed in the next 5 years, and how much we need to prepare for this change in schooling. And so one of those sources is a report called the NMC Horizon Report, K-12 edition, and this just came out a few months ago. And it's a really handy little guide. It won't take you more than an hour to read or review, that just predicts what's going to be happening in the next 1 to 10 years in K-12 education. And it really It talks about some of these things, about online learning, about MOOCs, about new learning analytics and new ability for students and teachers to track their learning programs. And it also talks about, engaging learning, about what's meaningful for kids, that we have to help them find their way towards personal inquiry learning. And I think the thesis of this book I put here at the bottom: the future of learning lies in student-centered, Web 2.0 empowered networked connectivism. And we really need to sort of use this as insight for what we need to be doing in our schools. A second source, inspirational source for me, is the writing of Tom Vander Ark. His new book is called Getting Smart, and I think it's just been out a few months now, but he's been with the Gates Foundation for a long time. I don't think he's there anymore. He's independent now. But he's been one of the most prescient, perceptive thinkers about how much learning is changing, will be changing in the next few years. I didn't provide this slide for you expecting you to read all of this, but just to give you an example, this is a web article he has called 40 Predictions, 40 different ways in which education is going to be changing in the next 5 to 10 years. And I use this to really inform my thinking, my prediction about where this is all going, and I direct your attention to it. Another really wonderful blog post that maybe some of you have seen before, it got quite a lot of circulation last year, is called, 2 years ago, called 21 Things That Will Become Obsolete in Education by 2020. So this is Shelley Blake Pollock's article. I just gave you the very first one there. Desks will be obsolete by 2020. There will be no desks, the prediction is, or at least that's the trend we're seeing. So this is a great little article for you to look at. You could look at it with your administrative team. You could look at it with your faculty. You could use it with your boards, any kind of strategic planning committee. This would be a really great way, very quick, simple, easy to read introduction to sort of one smart thinker's predictions about how much things will be changing between the year 2010 and the year 2020. And I use this to inform my presentation very greatly. Another source for me is Ken Kay's work. Ken Kay was the founder and longtime president of the Partnership for 21st Century Education. He has a new book out called The Leader's Guide to 21st Century Education. Ken Kay's has really tried to simplify, in a sense, or reduce and distill, maybe is a better way of saying it, his argument to be consistent and easy to follow and clear, and he reiterates it again and again and again. We have to help our students develop to proficiency, to a high level of proficiency, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Those are what employers are looking for. Those are the things that our kids have to master to be successful in this new age, in this changing era. These are what we have to help develop for our students, and they should infuse every decision we make about our educational program. want to talk about milkshakes for a minute because Michael Horn, whose article with Clayton Christensen, Rethinking Student Motivation, is built upon their book, Disrupting Class. It's sort of the next iteration of their argument. But in order to understand this Rethinking Student Motivation piece, you need to understand, you need to talk about milkshakes for a minute. What Horn and Christensen explain is that people who study marketing, people who study how companies, how businesses try to sell to their customers, sometimes make this mistake, or too often make the mistake, of focusing on what, on a seller's perspective. What am I trying to sell? What is it that I'm selling to my customer, and how can I help them want what I'm selling more than they want it now? And what Christensen and Horn say, it's better to churn that around. Don't think about what you're selling. Think about what your customer is buying. Or they like this concept of what your customer is hiring your product or service for. What are they hiring your product or service for? What are they hiring it? What job in their life are they hiring it for to get accomplished? It sort of really tries to invert the way we think about sales and marketing. And so they talk about McDonald's. McDonald's wanted to sell more milkshakes. I think they have a great profit margin on their milkshakes. They wanted to sell more of them. And they figured they were selling this sweet treat as a dessert. And they wanted to think about how can we help people buy this sweet milkshake treat more, this dessert that we're trying to sell them. And so they went out and they studied, when do people buy milkshakes and when don't they? And they had this surprising realization that people don't buy milkshakes that often after their meal. They don't actually buy them in the afternoon or evening that often. They buy them most often in the morning in the drive-through lane. And what they realized, that didn't make any sense to them at all. That completely confounded their expectations. So then they started studying. They had people actually follow, watch people who were buying milkshakes. And what people were buying milkshakes for was that if you're driving to work in the morning, if you have a long drive, commutes are getting longer, and you're hungry, you didn't have time for breakfast, this is the easiest thing to consume, easiest meal to consume without getting your suit dirty in the morning. And so they were hiring it to fulfill their own need, very different from what the company expected. So Horn and Christensen say, what are students hiring school for? And their research, I like the article, I don't love the article. I think their research could be better established. But their argument, their analysis is that students are hiring school for just two main reasons. One reason is they're hiring school for a place to, the job they wanted to get done is to provide them a place to have fun with their fellow students, to socialize, to get together with other kids. And the second thing they're hiring school for is to give themselves, to provide them a sense of success, a sense of progress, a sense of getting something done, of ascending a ladder, of becoming more, a more successful adult. So those are what students are hiring school for, a place to socialize and a place to feel a sense of progress. And if we shift what happens in schools so that we provide those things for students, we are going to really help them feel more engaged. They're going to come to school more often. So, using that as my platform, let's talk now about what are the things we can do. What are the dozen things we should prioritize to bring students to school, to keep them coming to our schoolhouses, to keep them feeling good about being in school, and to prepare them, to make it relevant for them, to make it meaningful for them, to make it so that they really are prepared for life and for careers. The first thing is we got to start with making students, ensure they feel cared for and connected. They're not going to get that online in the same way. It's very unlikely they're going to have, even with good online teachers, a sense of attention, of presence, of comfort, of warmth that all of us of any age, but children especially, crave. And so a key priority for us in our planning for the next 5 to 10 years is what are we doing to make strong, connected, caring relationships available for our students? Are we, not just continuing, but are we beefing up our advisory programs? Our advisory programs and our teacher advising and mentoring is something we can offer in schoolhouses that can't be offered by Khan Academy or by a MOOC or by K12.com. We can really boost that. David Brooks, the New York Times columnist who wrote that book a couple of years ago, The Social Animal, he wrote about this in the New Yorker. He said all of his research, because he did this massive amount of sociological research, says that what matters most to people in bringing them back to an environment is that they feel cared for, they feel connected, and that he says this especially in schools. This is the first and most proven part of research, build that caring relationship. So in preparing for this coming transformation, make the relationships matter. I think that the second thing we need to do, I think, is actually respect student social life. We have to, acknowledge students want to come to school to socialize. We should make sure they have time for that. If we say to students, you only have a 3-minute passing period and a 20-minute lunch, they're going to say to themselves, school isn't giving me what I hire it for, if you go back to the reframing student motivation. They're going to say, I'm going to, I'm going to do my learning online. I'm going to drop out of school so that I can find other ways and, to spend time with my friends. So I actually think this is a little counterintuitive because often these days we're talking about more time on task, more time for students, more time for student learning. I think we need to make sure our school days are healthily structured so that the kids have time to chat, to connect, to socialize, to talk. Some of this can happen in advisory programs. Some of this can happen in classrooms if we take a different attitude that socializing matters to kids. My third thing is collaboration in the classroom. So this is, a connection to the previous one. If the more we do project-based learning, the more we do group work, wisely, carefully structured, the more we help students work together, not only are we giving them that incredibly important 21st century skill of collaboration, but our classrooms are going from spaces where they sit and listen to us deliver information, which they can just get online now, and instead they're constructing their own understanding in collaboration with their peers, and they're socializing. We all know this about our own workplaces. We want to go to work, places where we get a chance to talk in the water cooler, connect with others, build upon each other's ideas. And we need to provide this for our students consistently throughout the school day, throughout the school program, to make it a meaningful, preparatory environment for them. Fourth, I got a dozen ideas I got to get us through here. Fourth is real-world situated learning. Some of the other research about what makes kids feel good in school is when they are honored and respected as the soon-to-be adults that they are. And kids, and I've seen this, kids love to take on the attitude, the demeanor of a professional. Look at these guys with hard hats, all right? They're students in school, but they're out studying, architecture or studying engineering or studying math, and they put on their hard hats because they like taking on the guise of being young professionals themselves. When I visited schools in California, High Tech High, New Tech schools, school in Fresno called CART, some of the most interesting experiences I saw when students were asked in a law class, they were asked to come dressed like lawyers. In the chemistry class, you put on those lab coats and you put on those goggles. You are acting as a chemist, and kids really respond to that. The better you can situate their learning in a real-world context, whether it's real world or a facsimile inside our schoolhouses, the more they're going to want to come to school, the more they're engaged they are in their learning. Will Richardson poses this in his book. He asked this question. He says, what if we actually told students that half of their time on schoolwork they have to do real-world schoolwork? They have to do stuff that actually is situated in the real world, that is tackling real-world problems. They have to be writing articles for the local newspaper. They need to be preparing materials for the local museum. They need to be studying, things in the newspaper. The more we can draw from and then put back out into the real world, write a letter to the editor on their knowledge, the more significant it is, the more compelling it is for them, the more they're going to get why they're doing it, and they're going to want to keep doing it. Number 5, we've got to go one-to-one. I mean, there's just students are one-to-one. Almost all of our students, starting in first or second or third grade, are one-to-one with web-connected devices, whether they be smartphones or laptops, tablets. They are in every other part of their life. They are before breakfast. They are at home in the evening. They are with their friends socializing around town. That is what they expect to be. That's what every professional is after school. They need to have that same sense of empowerment, of connectivity in their schools, and we've got to make it a top priority to provide one-to-one access to them throughout their school day, whether that's BYOD, which I'm a fan of, or school-provided devices, which have other advantages. We've got to go there. Just a little research from Project Red, and this source is cited in my list here. In a properly implemented one-to-one program, you will reduce disciplinary action, you see improvements in high-stake test scores, you see a dropout rate reduce, and that's important to my message, compelling and relevant. You see increased graduation rates. We've got to go one-to-one in our schools to be engaging and relevant and compelling in the 21st century. Number 6, this is a little more controversial. We've got to open it all up too. We've got to open access. We've got to make sure our web filtering is pretty wide open. I don't think it has to be open altogether to pornography, for God's sakes. But I think it should be open to social networks, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. I think it should be open to lots of different ways in which students can access and connect information. I also think that we should think about how far we can extend the open and everything. Both Seth Godin and Will Richardson have talked recently, and I've written frequently about open computer testing. We should say to students, use your computers on every test you take and use the internet in every test you take. And if the questions we're asking are questions that are easy for students to answer by a quick Google search, then that's not a good question for them to be asking. We got to sort of have an attitude of the kind of thinking they need to be doing is thinking where they get quick access to the information and then they add analysis on top of it. So open computers, open the internet during tests. Have an open attitude throughout our schoolhouses. Got to keep going here. We got to teach kids digital citizenship. We got to teach them how to build digital footprints. We got to teach them digital literacies. This is engaging for them. They want to know these things. They want to develop these skills and proficiencies. Just because they're digital natives doesn't mean they have them. They want to become better at making videos. They want to become better at analyzing information online. They want to become better at blogging. But they don't know how to necessarily. And this includes attention and focus and how to manage distractions. These kids desperately need this learning. And to say remove the devices because they don't know how to do it is the wrong approach. We say give them the devices and teach them how to do it. Number 8, digital textbooks are interactive, they're adaptive, they're multimedia, they're current. If we're not by 2020 using all digital textbooks, they're light to carry. This is a huge area of research that we've got to be exploring to make learning relevant and compelling. Number 9. Is personalized learning and learning analytics. Personalized learning is where some of the time this conflicts, I fear, with collaborative learning, with social learning, with personal attention and personal caring. There's a tension there that you've got to reconcile. But at the same time that you want group learning and group work and caring teaching in place, you also want to give students opportunities for them to go at their own pace, to work for mastery, and to track their own progress and to monitor little dashboards of what's working for them, these learning analytics for students. This is still a new phenomenon. This is still being developed, but it's going to be very significant in the next 5 to 10 years where students have their own dashboards to say how much time were they on task, how focused were they, what's a good time of day for them to learn, how many words do they type, how many different sites do they visit, how much do they how well are they doing in their proficiency development? And this is going to be reported to them, and we need to teach kids how to track these for their own sake. I got to keep going. Number 10, schools have to be places. They need to be laboratories and studios. They need to be places where students are building things, using 3D printers, building robots, becoming more innovative. They need to be starting businesses in our schools. These are things they can't use their hands so much at their own homes. They can't build robots at home so easily. They can do that in our schools. We can buy the 3D printers for them. We can give them the spaces, the fab labs. We can help them start businesses at school. We can help have these things embedded in our schoolhouse, which online learning can't provide for them, which is incredibly important for their future, and which they will care about. They'll be meaningful to them. We need to give them authentic assessment opportunities where it's not filling in multiple choice tests. It's where experts are reviewing what we're producing and giving us feedback. Where we're doing performance tasks. My last presentation for Simple K-12, and you can find it in Simple K-12, is on performance task assessments, where students are actually doing open-ended, challenging problems and gathering resources, analyzing them, and creatively answering them. We've got to change the assessments fast. Performance task assessment is coming in the Common Core assessments being developed by PARC and Smarter Balanced, but we can start doing them in our schools today, not waiting for the national companies to do it. We need to make it more preparatory for them, because that's the kind of challenge they'll have to tackle as professionals, but also more engaging than filling in a multiple choice test. And 12, we need to talk all the time, think all the time about how are we asking students to be ethical minded, how are we giving them complicated ethical situations and having them talk about it and analyze and assess it and evaluate it, but also how are we asking them to tackle challenges and persevere, learn from failure, show grit and determination. We need to give them challenging experiences every day and have them and help them work through those things. And we need to think about character education as both performance and ethical, both sort of ethical dilemmas and also grit and perseverance. And the new book by Paul Tough called How Children Succeed is a huge resource for this, and it's on my list. So my time's up. I think it went over a minute or two. And this is my some of my resources for you. That link will take you to every book and article I cited in this presentation. The blog is where a lot of this information, where I'm writing about this all the time, and my email is there if you want to follow up.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, Jonathan. I'll give you a couple of minutes to catch your breath, and then we'll take some Q&A from our attendees. So if you have a question, please submit it now through that questions box of GoToWebinar. Now, I did have a couple of questions that came in during the presentation today that I can answer for you now while Jonathan catches his breath. And the first question that came in is from Beth, and she says, where can I access additional resources for administrators? Well, Beth, if you go into the teacher learning community, I'll go ahead and take you in there and show you where you can get some additional resources. If you look under the courses tab, you see right underneath that a link for administrator resources. And if you click on that link, you'll see that there is just tons and tons of information that is available there for administrators. Any topic that you could possibly imagine is there for you at your fingertips. Now, if you are interested in watching an on-demand webinar recording, you would need to have the full access membership to access those archived webinars. Now, with that full access membership, you would have access to all of those on-demand webinar recordings, so all of the archived webinars, the self-paced tutorials, in addition to being able to print those certificates of completion. Now, if you have a group of educators at your school or in your district, we can offer a group membership, and you can also submit a PO as well. Now, that full access membership does unlock all of the resources within the teacher learning community. It enables you to keep up to date with all the latest trends in education. Watching live webinars is great. I love being here with you live, but just let's be honest, it's so much more convenient to be able to watch those webinars on demand. You can start watching the webinar. If you need to pause, so you want to go get a snack, let the dog out, you can pause the webinar. You can come back and pick up right where you left off. It's just the ultimate convenience. It's so easy. Now, today we do have a special offer for our attendees today, $120 off of that full access membership price. So being able to watch all of those on-demand webinar recordings, being able to print those certificates of completion, in addition to over 1,000 hours of those self-paced tutorials. Now, I wanted to go back and do some Q&A, but I just wanted to let you know that I will be able to stay on for a couple of minutes after our session today if you had any additional questions regarding that full access membership or anything inside of the teacher learning community. Okay, Jonathan, let's go ahead and check our questions here.
Okay.
I did have one question that came in from Liz. She has the links, but she was just wondering, what was the title of the first book that you referenced at the beginning of the webinar?
Disrupting Class by Clayton Christensen, I think.
Got it. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much again, Jonathan, for a wonderful presentation, and we look forward to having you back here in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you.